And the other thing you can do is this, if you're really good. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a couple of days with Omega, and we've done some note-taking, we've done some figuring out, some trial and erroring, probably a lot of erroring, especially with the Savage version, but I think at this point we can really start talking about how we want to fight this guy. A bunch of other people made guides at this point, but I think it pays to give things a little bit of time and sit on things even more. So we're gonna talk about Omega, how he operates, how he works, what's available to you, what you want to do, and when. And as always, with any kind of mechanical guide I'm going over, not necessarily giving the greatest and most optimal advice, nor advice that you absolutely have to follow, just some stuff that might be helpful to you, some tips and tricks, and some things to at the very least contemplate when you're going into battles like this. Monster is a very mechanically rich series, and in certain fights, it will bring all of those mechanics up into the forefront for certain battles, which are fights that I really like, and Omega, I think, is a shining example of battles like this, so it pays to have a number of different viewpoints and different perspectives and strategies when tackling this thing properly. Also, with any mechanical breakdown I go into for a fight like this, I had to do research and get my facts straight. Might also get things wrong, I might overlook things, and there's also some other people I may have taken points and strategies from because I thought what they had to say was pretty worthwhile. So if I get anything wrong, correct me down below, and if you've heard some of these ideas in other places, yeah, no, I am reiterating some points and some plans that a couple others have come up with as well, just because I think the information was very useful and we're sharing. So first off, let's talk about your weapon choice and where it is most useful. So worth knowing is that the head has really good hit zones to pretty much everything. Against cutting damage and against shot type damage, its hit zones are 45, and impact is its best at 50. So if you're tanking or pulling aggro, pretty much any type of weapon is viable if you want to get your weakness exploit off. So if you are going to be the one who is tanking or pulling aggro, your hit zones are pretty good. They are all above 45, which will proc your weakness exploit if you're using a weapon that cares about weakness exploits. Cutting and shot type damage are at 45 exactly, and impact is going to be hitting at 50, so if you want to be tanking, your lances are going to operate just fine. If you want to pull aggro with something that isn't necessarily a tanking weapon, you might have a slightly rougher go of it, but your damage output is still going to be fine so long as you're hitting consistently. Now, if you're going for DPS, that means you are going for the legs, and you need to make sure you're going after the right set of legs. If you're going with impact or gunning weapons, you're going after the forelegs. Its hit zones are 65 and 60. If you're going with cutting damage, you want to be going for the hind legs, as those have a hit zone of 60. Omega pretty much across the board has really good hit zones, minus right on the abdomen and the torso and whatnot. So if you're hitting the parts that you're supposed to be hitting, weakness exploit is a very valuable skill in this game, so long as you're running a weapon where weakness exploit is valuable in general and you know where exactly you're supposed to be hitting. Of course, Thunder Element is the best element to be using here. Dragon lags by 5 on each zone except for the back sensor, which can only really be hit during his leg break, so that's not something you really want to concern yourself with. If you're running Element, even if it's just for a little bit of extra damage ticks, you are going with Thunder. Also worth knowing is that the back sensor is insanely weak to melee damage. I think it's immune to shot type damage though, which is sensible because the only time you're usually going to be able to hit it when the battle is going on is with gunning weapons. It's typically way too high up there for any kind of melee damage to do, but if you get the leg down, his back sensor will come out and you can do a lot of damage there with both impact and with cutting damage. I think impact goes to a full 100, so you're getting your full damage capacity if you're hitting him in the back sensor with impact damage. Also worth knowing is that his legs all have the same hit zone value of 20 to Thunder. The head is slightly weaker at 25. So if you're running DPS and you want to be running elements, there is no particular weapon type that is going to be better for element usage. So they're all at 20. You can run basically whatever you want. You just need to make sure that you're hitting the right set of legs. But for elemental considerations, all legs are equal. Worth knowing is that you don't necessarily need to be tanking if you're attacking the head. You just need to pull aggro. So weapons like the bow or the dual blades have their dodge tech and decent elemental output, so you can actually capitalize on that slightly weaker 25 value on the head off of element, going off of a weapon that does slightly more elemental damage if you want to, but of course your lances are your easiest way to deal with aggro pulling if you just want to strictly tank. It's worth knowing you don't have to lock yourself into a tank position, a support position, and a 2 DPS position. This is just a very efficient way of playing. The way the aggro mechanics work and how he focus fires his attacks, it makes sense for there to be an individual who will soak up a ton of hits, and for there to be another individual who can keep the tank strong and standing and just living through everything. Plus, if you're not pulling aggro, Omega is going to be ping-ponging all over the place. A couple of his attacks actually get more dangerous if he doesn't have a set aggro, and the fight is going to become more erratic. This setup of 4 isn't mandated, but what it is going to do is give you a little bit more control over battle flow and redirect them in certain ways that's going to kind of just keep things a little bit easier for you. Honestly, SNS is another option if you want to steal aggro, because that can output elements, it can inflict KO, and it can deal cutting damage and decent elemental damage. So SNS has a lot of utility up there. You very likely want to be getting your perfect blocks down extremely well if you want to SNS with aggro. Now, let's talk about the resources that you have available to you, because you need to know the fact that you have a lot of stuff that isn't just your weapons in this fight. In fact, that I find to be a very important component of the fight, is that you have more than just your weapons on hand. So mounting is, of course, a resource. If you mount him once, the buildup is pretty severe. You're probably not going to be mounting him again until the end phase. So if you want to get 2, you definitely can get 2. You're just going to need to be persistent about it once you hit the end phase. But honestly, saving a mount for an emergency is really not a bad idea. All you'd really be doing from getting a mount off the gate is just blitzing phase 1, which is the easiest phase and doesn't really need to be blitzed. Entirely up to you, though, if you want to try and spread the mounts out a little bit. An initial paralysis can be landed on Omega without much effort, but what will happen is his paralysis tolerances will skyrocket, going up by intervals of about 1,000 to a maximum of 6,300. If this information I got off of Koranico is right, who knows, it's Koranico, but I think this is data mined information, so it's probably correct. But yeah, if you want to get a paralysis off to lock him down, that first one's going to be pretty generous for you. It's going to progressively get very difficult to paralyze him again, so one well-timed paralysis fired off during Pantocrator mode, maybe in the final phase, could be a good opening for you. Don't expect to get it too many times after that unless you're being very persistent with it. And again, do you really want to waste paralysis in phase 1 or phase 2? However, at the same time, his stun tolerance builds up considerably less harshly. So if you want to be using hammer to pull aggro or SNS to pull aggro instead of your typical lances, you do have that option for you. Again, you do want to be careful if you're not the weapon that wants to be pulling aggro, because getting stuns can be useful, but that means he's going right for you next, most likely. Also, very important, worth mentioning, I think this is something I got wrong in my initial talkings about Omega, is that when he enters Pantocrator mode, he will heal over his wounds. So he is not going to allow you to stockpile them and just focus fire those and knock him immediately out of Pantocrator. So if you have wounds on his legs and he's not in his super enraged state, it's a little unfortunate that that resource has to go, but that resource has to go, otherwise you can't use it later. And that is a really good quick stun and a lot of damage to him, so you might as well take that resource while you have it. I was thinking about this a little bit. It might be a worthwhile potential strategy where if he is not enraged, you have your DPS and your support a little bit spread thin, attacking different legs, kind of just spattering out and peppering in some minor wound buildup here and there. And once he gets into Pantocrator mode, that's when everybody is focus firing one leg or trying their best to focus fire one leg and get that wound buildup very, very quickly, and kind of capitalizing on a little bit of the buildup that was there beforehand. For this reason, I don't think Flare is the most important skill for this fight, as you don't want to be bum rushing your wounds too early. You really want those very precious resources to knock him out of Pantocrator. I don't think that's a mandatory strategy or anything like that, but it is a potential ploy to try and kind of spread yourselves thin a little bit when he's not enraged, and then focus up and really try to go for those wound breaks as soon as he goes in a rage to try and shut him down as quickly as possible. Maybe that's a good strat, maybe it's not. It's something that came to my mind. So, worth noting, Inevitably, you are very likely going to get a wound that opens up at a semi-inopportune time. If it does, it's not the end of the world. Don't waste it. Take the damage. Worth noting is the general utility of wound closers is that they are great for attack interruptions, which is awesome for Omega. This is why bow is a particularly awesome weapon for this game, because it can hold its tracking shot on him, and you have a little bit more control when exactly you're going to fire off the interruption instead of just tossing out the attack, which is going to stagger him. So if you see him about to go into something like the MRVs or the mustard bomb or whatever, you can hold for a second, wait for it, and then fire off and get just even a little bit more control and canceling him out of doing something particularly major. Sticking with the wounds themselves, but now kind of blending into another target, if you do close wounds on his head, you will drop a bubble shield right in front of him. If you have that opportunity, take it. Bubble shields will invalidate about half his moveset. Now, if you do go in those shields, you still need to look out for things like his stomp, his slams, his charging dash attack, and the trampling rampage, but all of his ranged attacks will be eaten up for a little while, gradually chipping away at the shield's integrity. It is much easier if you are pulling aggro to now get right up in his face and stab him in the head over and over and over again if you have that bubble shield, as there's a lot of attacks you now do not need to give a crap about for a good chunk of seconds. So if you have that wound opening on his head, take it, go for the nearly free damage. Just be careful you don't overextend, because he might catch you with a melee attack. Of course, bubble shields can also be generated from destroying those glowing blue robot baby things that he deploys. You want the ones that kind of look like they're electrocuted and glowing with lightning on them. Blow that up, you'll get another bubble shield on the ground. Nab that while you have it. It's not going to be around forever, might as well take it. And you should probably try and blow up some of the rest of them too, or at least dodge their explosions before they do them. What those little baby robots are going to do is they're going to explode, and they have a stagger lock property on their explosion. It's not going to be a full knockdown, but it's going to keep you in place for a second, and if that trip up hits, it might be a good opportunity for Omega to then hit you with something much stronger. So get out of the way of those robots and let them kamikaze themselves from a distance, or just get rid of them nice and easy. Also worth mentioning is that when you get his leg breaks, he will drop this big chunk off of himself. You can harvest that and use that for fireable slinger ammo, which will deploy a bubble shield all on its own. It gives you a little bit more control over when you want to use it, because most uses of the bubble shields are going to be out of your control. This now gives you a little bit more control. And an extra little fun fact, if you didn't know, you can fully disable the mustard bombs by having them crash into the bubble shields. It will automatically destroy the shield no matter what its integrity is, but it will also completely get rid of the missile, and the fire effect won't touch the ground. So if you want to expend a used shield, or you just have a shield very nearby and you feel like it is worth getting rid of, you can get that terrain hazard off the map entirely. Do remember that the Pictomancer spells are a consistent resource. They will be on a cooldown of 30 seconds, and they'll be on a cycle of 3. They are really good at dealing damage, and actually have increased wound buildup proportionate to the damage that they output. Keep those peppered in consistently, especially if you're running DPS. It's free chunks of a lot of damage. Just to put things into perspective, in multiplayer, the basic Omega is just shy of 140,000 health, and the third spell, which is Mog of Ages, deals a little over 1,300 damage. So every successful Mog spell is just shy of 1 free percentage of his health lost in multiplayer. Just to tell you how strong that spell actually is. The Sacred is also a very important resource here. As you know, in this game, you have the ability to hop onto the Sacred automatically in combat. You have a couple of different options on there. Is it something you're often going to be using in the midst of combat against most monsters? No, not really. Here, it is very important. It is free, rapid travel that you can get with a button press, even while you still have your weapon drawn. This has a lot of different uses to it. You can use it to draw a mustard bomb away from the crowd. You can use it to clear distance from the MRV missile salvos very easily. You can use it to get out of the path of destruction of his trampling gallop attack. And you can also use it to run away very quickly from his stunning beam. There are a lot of very dangerous attacks that this guy has access to that the Sacred will be able to get you away from. There's no shame in running away, repositioning, and getting back into the fight very quickly. Use the Sacred to get yourself to safety, especially against some of his more spammy attacks. Here's another fun fact for you that I've picked up on. For just about the start of every phase, barring the start of the battle itself, Omega's opening move is almost always going to be a mustard bomb as an opening shot. So when you get to him, I think a lot of people are going to hop off of their their Sacrets, go for the mounting attacks, and get up in there. What you should probably do instead is stay on the Sacred and kite around to the sides into the corners, let him pick out a mustard bomb target, and then be on the Sacred and running around so that you can corner shove that mustard bomb right off the bat. He very, very consistently, I think almost hard scripted, fires off that bomb as the first salvo to get that terrain hazard down. So when you get down to him, stay on the Sacred and cut around to the sides and the corners, get the mustard bomb out of there early. Now you have your ice boulders. You have these in areas 2, 3, and 4. Unlike Jindahad, these things have zero utility outside of damage. If he's under them, drop them. They do a lot of damage. They can get a little bit of a stagger on him. If he's up in the air, that can be a free drop on him. I've got leg breaks with these things. Super useful. There's like a dozen of them over the course of the battle. Use them. Here's another fun fact for you. When the clone Nerscylla dies and Omega fires off the Delta Beam, he will drop beneath a collapsible giant metal pillar. If you're quick enough, that is free every single time. If you hit him with it early though, whatever, you still hit him with it early. Damage is still done. Another resource for you is the zone transitions themselves. When you're hopping around on the rocks getting to Omega from after he retreats, this is your perfect opportunity to use things like Might Seeds, Adamant Seeds, Might's Pills, Adamant Pills, stuff like that. Use that traversal time and that downtime to reapply your damage and your defense items and have them nice and freshen up for you going into this next phase so you can get some early damage out and block a couple of early hits pretty well. Meanwhile, you have other items that last a whole lot longer, things like hot drinks as well as demon drugs and armor drugs. What you can do there is actually drink them before you all go on the quest. Their timer won't start expiring until the quest actually initiates. So you can take these items that take longer to consume but also last longer and prepare for the fight by having them equipped before you even go in. So you can take these items that last longer but also take much longer to consume. Instead of wasting time in the base camp consuming them, you can instead have them preset and preloaded and their timers all ready to go before you even step foot into the quest. Now let's talk about some things like utility and comfy skills. And this is worth remembering for people who just want to go max DPS, max DPS, max DPS. Remember that uptime is DPS. Running around and healing is not DPS. Riding back from a feint is not DPS. Scrambling around getting knocked all over the place is not DPS. Unless you're really good with fights like this. Sometimes having the biggest individual number in the moment does not mean that you're going to be getting the best clear times, or even a clear time at all. Sometimes survivability is DPS. The best offense is a good defense type of thing. Also, it's worth remembering all of the very good hit zones that he has and the slew of tools that we just covered, a lot of stuff that the game is going to give you that isn't just your weapons to use against him. A lot of your damage against Omega is going to be coming from sources outside of your weaponry. And the great hit zones that he has is going to pick up some of the slack of damage loss if you're not running purely damage skills. What this data is basically telling you is that it is incentivizing you to use utility and survivability because it will cover that loss with things like Pictomancy and things like droppable objects and things like really good hit zones. The game is throwing you a bone by giving you all those options by allowing you to be a little bit more lax on your DPS skills. So things like stun resistance are always handy. Not only can it help you if you're getting pelted with attacks, but if you get hit by that big beam, which I think automatically stuns or nearly automatically stuns, and you do get hit by it, if you got stun negate, the game will not force stand you back up into the beam and make you take a second hit and die. Quick Sheath is a really good way to flee from harm very quickly. If the Sacred getup isn't going to be fast enough for you, you can sheath and just sprint away. If you don't want Quick Sheath and the Sacred is also going to be pretty slow, you have another panic button, and that's Evade Extender. This is an awesome option if you want to escape from missile trajectories or kite away a mustard bomb or something like that. It's a really nice skill to have if you're going to be up close, especially if you're lancing Evade Extender and then going into back hop, back hop, back hop, back hop is going to get you away from a lot of different attacks pretty cleanly. Evade window is also excellent, especially for the weapons that make the best use of it, but just having the option to cleanly get away from his moves, even if you're overextended and in really deep in the fight, is just a nice option to have. If you're running support, you're definitely going to want to consider skills such as Mushroom Mancer, Speed Eating, Free Meal, and Wide Range. Those are helpful even if you're going to be predominantly running Hunting Horn, but especially if you're running SNS, a lot of consumption skills to get those buffs to your team very, very, very quickly is going to be great for them. If you are going to be tanking, specifically, you want both guard and guard up as high as possible. Guard up will block all of his attacks, as there's a few unblockable attacks. I believe the stunning beam is one of them, and it will minimize your chip damage down to 80% damage reduced. Guard itself will prevent you from being staggered over and over from the block animations, keeping those much more expedient, and it will make it much harder for Omega to kill you via stamina depletion. Fire resistance is another one. All of his elemental attacks deal fire damage, so that's just damage reduction off rip. Part Breaker I don't think is a mandatory skill, but it could make the very large prolonged trip from his leg breaks be a little bit more consistent for you. Flare, at least a little bit, can be nice for some wound buildup, which is a big deal countering Pantocrator mode, though again, just for the sake of not expending too many wounds too quickly, might not be the best thing for you to max out that skill. Divine Blessing is just an awesome survival skill for any monster that is particularly challenging in general. Now, this is a lot of different options for you. You are, of course, going to need to pick and choose. You still want some damage skills, but you're going to want to take into consideration what your weapon is doing, what it struggles with, what your role is going to be, where you're going to be, and then plan some utility stuff around it just to increase your survivability or the survivability of your teammates. Let's talk about the Nerscylla next, and hard countering her specifically. I know some people are struggling with her. Some people hate this mechanic. I think it's really fun. First off, that second weapon slot that you have is your best friend. What was at one point a pretty useless mechanic, honestly, is now pretty pivotal for getting rid of her, because Omega is completely immune to fire and is weak to thunder, but Nerscylla is borderline immune to thunder, but extremely weak to fire. What you want to be doing is loading up on damage against her. So whatever skills you are slotting into your secondary weapon, have it all be damage. You want her off the field as quickly as possible. The other thing you want to be taking into consideration is it takes a couple of seconds for her to spawn. Use that spawn timer to your advantage. Swap over to your second weapon, reapply another might pill or something like that. Take those couple of seconds before you can even hit her to just load up on damage. One potential opening volley that I've seen that looks very useful is you find where a Cactuar spawns, because a whole bunch of other stuff will spawn from Omega summoning Nerscylla. Get behind that Cactuar, make sure that you have Mog of Ages loaded in on your spell list, so fire off the other two beforehand and have it on deck. Get behind it, snipe Nerscylla as she spawns in with the Mog of Ages. This is going to proc the Cactuar to attack, and it will also pull her aggro into the Cactuar that is now spinning around and firing needles. This is a really nice way to get a whole ton of damage off of her immediately, and also, remember how much damage the Mog of Ages does? I think it still does the same to her. Well, if that's over 1,000 damage, Clone Nerscylla in 4-player multiplayer on Standard Omega only has about 10k health, so if that's 4 Mog of Ages firing off rip, that's a lot of her health lost immediately. Even if it isn't the full 1,300, that's still a lot of damage. Her health pool is not that large. Another really good tip is to just get directly under her or as close to her as possible. Not only is that just good melee range, but at the same time, that's going to make you pretty safe from most of her laser attacks, which are the most dangerous things that she has access to. This might be a good chance to bring out the Rocksteady Mantle if you want to attack with Reckless Abandon, whether or not you brought the Rocksteady Mantle with you for the entire fight, or when Omega goes into phase 3 up on that platform, you duck back to camp, swap over the Rocksteady Mantle, and bring that in, knowing that you're going to be wanting to use it for Nerscylla, and then you can swap back at any time if you want to when he transitions back down into the bottom phase. Reckless Abandon is definitely what you want here. Give yourself the ability to hit her with it. Rocksteady Mantle is going to give you the opportunity to basically just go nuts. My personal favorite option, and a tool that I think is super fun to use against Nerscylla, is to rock an Ardean Firebow. So you have those 3 slots, build it for affinity, and then you slot in crit boost, you slot in fire attack with that crit element tag on there, and then you put in paralysis capacity on that bow. Now, why paralysis capacity? Couple of things. So you do have the Malboro plants that can paralyze her for you, but at the same time, you do now have to try to kite her into them or wait for them to come around, and that is loss of control, basically. If you're wasting time trying to get her into the path of the Malboro, that is time that you're not hitting her. Also, the Malboro can potentially put you at risk because it can fire off the debuffs and they can hit you. If you are running paralysis, that means you are in control of the paralysis and you're not leaving it up to an external factor. At the same time, Clone Nerscylla is so piddly little weak, tiny baby vulnerable to paralysis that I have actually watched her be chain paralyzed within seconds of one another. So if you rock a paralysis weapon, stun locker, there's another chance it might even happen again with the Malboro, or with the paralysis weapon again if you want to. I think running a fire bow with that paralysis attachment off of it, awesome way to lock her down. Then you swap back over, then do fire damage with close range coatings, a crit boost and fire damage, and just rip them off into her, and it is easy damage. Basically, if you don't let her play her game, she loses pretty much automatically. Paralysis, especially within your control, is the best way, I think, to bully her and make her not be able to play her game. And if you're running bow, you have the opportunity to do the high level fire damage and the paralysis. There's probably a light bowgun in there too that can do the same thing. I don't know the light bowguns nearly as well. Point still stands. The last thing we are going to cover before we get out of here is countering and prepping for the attacks themselves. First thing you want to look for is if the back sensor comes out and spins around and flashes, it means he's going to be doing some of his main attacks. Not all of them though, we'll cover that in a second. So when his sensor flashes white, that means he can be doing the rocket punches, the muster bomb, or the MRV missiles. The only other named attacks that don't come with this sensor flash are the delta attack, which you're gonna know when he's doing the delta beam attack, and also starboard and larboard. Starboard and larboard, on the other hand though, not as terrifying. They will be called up well in advance. He's then going to stop for a little bit and then spin to the side before firing off the wave cannons. The other thing worth knowing about the starboard and larboard wave cannons is that you're not actually so much worried about the lasers. There's going to be half a beat after the sweep before the after effect explosion pops off. You want to be dodging or guarding in that half beat before the explosion goes off to be able to defend yourself off of starboard and larboard. You can use that teeny little grace window that the game gives you to defend yourself. The MRV missiles are one of his scarier moves, and this is probably the attack you want the aggro up for the most. If anybody has enmity, what will happen is the MRV missiles will go after that person. If he fires off the MRVs and nobody has aggro, then everybody is having an MRV salvo going after them. This is a 4-shot missile barrage, and it can be timed in a way to punish Superman dives. The easiest way to deal with the MRVs, if you can't just tank through them or whatnot, is to sheathe and sprint. You will be able to outrun the missiles. Call for the sacred if you can, get out of the way, and just let the missiles detonate behind you one after the other after the other. If you're perfect dodging or perfect guarding, you gotta be careful. There is a trick you can learn with the standard missiles. That being, when they fire down on you, the orange within the circle will start to dull right before impact. That is the tell you are looking for to dodge or perfect block off of the normal missiles. The MRVs specifically are different. They have a different tell. That orange in the middle of the circle is not going to fade. This has caught me a number of times. Instead, what you're looking for is that the more intense orange at the ring of the MRV is going to pulse slightly right before detonation. That's what you want to look for if you're doing perfect interactions off of the MRVs. It's very difficult to do and very dangerous. I have been able to do it, but you got to be careful with that attack. It's probably one of the scariest that he has, just because of the absolute bombardment he can set off. And then of course, it's not even just the missiles themselves, it's what he can then follow up into. So you gotta look for that little pulse, or you just gotta run. The rocket punch is only dangerous if it's blended in with other more dangerous moves, and even then it's the least scary part of that combo. It's kind of a distraction, honestly. It's a very slow moving, intimidating looking attack with these giant fists. It is worth noting that these fists can be shot and swatted out of the sky. They are insanely slow. They can be used for fuel for things like adrenaline rush or offensive guard, any kind of perfect attack interaction that you have off of your weapon. These are really good fuel moves for that, and they can also be used to trigger power clashes, which can deal a lot of damage to Omega. Honestly, this is one of the least scary things that he has access to. It's kind of a boon, honestly, when he uses the rocket punch, so might as well use it to your advantage, but be careful that he might also be doing things like firing off missiles or using the flame cones from underneath him at the same time that he's doing the rocket punch. Speaking of those flame vents, they can be dodged by going towards him and going to the narrower point of the flame cone and then going to the side. It makes it very easy to get out of the way. Worth knowing that if he flame cones again, he's going to be filling in the cones that he didn't fill the first time, so you just want to dodge off to the side again. If you get out of the way of the first flame cone, it's very easy to get out of the way of the second one. When he's in Savage mode though, along with a couple of his other combos, he might do it a third time, so be wary of that and just make sure you're paying attention. And if you are doing perfect interactions like blocking and evading, blocking, what you're looking for is for him to do these kind of little baby mini stomps. He'll squat a little bit and his vents will flash right as the flames are coming out. That is your opportunity to use your perfect dodges or perfect blocks. His gigantic beam laser is a particularly scary move. What it will do is it'll lock onto one player and it will track them aggressively for the duration of the move. It's really annoying, especially if he decides to use it after he's knocked you down. This is a trick he likes to implement where he'll put you on your butt with one move, then go up into the air, fold up, and start doing the stun beam. So even if you're on the ground doing a delayed get up, he might fire off that stun beam, and then even if you roll out of it, he can still track your movement. So you're going to want to keep moving and keep moving and keep moving. The best thing you can do if you are being tracked by that stunning laser, you want to either delay your get up as long as you can and then keep moving and keep moving and keep moving, or if you're on the ground, you want to try and get close to him and go to his side so that his turn radius is just not going to be able to get you. If you are perfect blocking, you can kind of just tank through the entire thing pretty easily with that like shield walk animation. And the other thing you can do is this if you're really good. The attack also has a particularly long windup. You will definitely see it coming, so if you have the ability, just get up and run. If you're knocked on your butt before he's doing this ability, don't delay your get up. Just try to sprint, get on the bird, go off to the side, and survive. Another particularly annoying move that he has is that rushing charge attack. It might be my least favorite thing that he has in his kit. It is an enormous attack, comes out extremely fast. What you're looking for him to do is to plant his feet on the ground, lower his head in a kind of ready position like he's a football player about to charge you. If you can block or you can dodge, and you see that tell, you should probably be fine. You want to wait for like the instant that he's moving because that charge will fly at you. If he hits you and you survive though, this is an attack where you do want to delay your get up just in case he doubles the charge. Another thing to keep in mind is the Frost Blast that he'll have in the Savage Omega fight. This you can be able to tell is coming out pretty quickly. Another attack to look out for is the Frost Blast that'll have in the Savage Omega fight. You'll be able to see this one coming pretty easily. The ground is going to glow a much more luminous white than it normally looks, and this is a 360-degree move that has a smaller diameter, so if you see that coming out, you just want to back up. Now what you want to do if you do get hits is preemptively bring cleansers into this fight. It can clear the Frostblight status, and this is much more skill effective than bringing things like the bind resistance skill and cutting into more of your skill list. Just keep the cleansers on you. It's the cheapest way to get through this attack if you do get hits. Then you have the vertical beam sweeps, which you can fire off of his front, flanks, and back. This is another one that's pretty easy to evade. The hitboxes are extremely tight, and you can stand between the laser beams to duck the attack, or you can just dodge directly into them if you want to get that perfect evade off of. The beams will also start to go wide as they fan out, so if you're at a distance, it actually gets progressively easier and easier for you to evade these. Just watch where the beams are going and stand between them and you should be fine. He does have this health debuff attack after he fires off the Delta Beam. This is pretty easy to deal with. It is this one big orb that he will start to charge up. It's got a pretty big telegraph. He'll fire at the target that he's aggroing. The only thing that you really need to take into consideration with this move is it does have a splash effect, so you want to keep your distance from your teammates if he's targeting you with this move. And for the trampling rampage, gonna be honest, there is no shame in just hopping on the Sacred and waiting it out for a couple of seconds. You can definitely try to dodge everything and attack through it. You can, but it is purposely very erratic, very all over the place, and the damage is gigantic. Honestly, your best bet is to just wait things out, go to a slight distance, let him get himself tired, and then what will happen is that he'll have an exposed wound on every single one of his legs. Try to keep your team spread out a little bit and capitalize on those for a lot of damage instantaneously. Worth noting, if he is in Pantocrator mode, closing these wounds will not contribute to the loss of Pantocrator mode. It's just a lot of damage and a free stun. The only other thing that's really worth mentioning is your support hunters. If you want to be fighting it but don't want to be going into multiplayer and flipping the coin on randos, the support hunters are extremely consistently good. They are programmed to be good at this fight. Their damage is considerable. The loadout that you typically want is your Lancer, your Sword and Shield player, and your Hunting Horn user. Hunting Horn and SNS will consistently do damage as well as keep you alive with buffs and heals and items, and Alessa with her Lance is going to deliberately be going for aggro pulling and face tanking, they have been tuned to go for this fight specifically. They are enormously useful if you don't want to true solo this thing, but you also don't have a party that you can consistently play with. They know what they're doing. And that, I think, is everything I want to cover about Omega Planetes. I think this fight's awesome. I think there is a ton to learn about him, a ton to think about, a ton to theory craft. It's a super fun fight to just contemplate how you want to approach with your friends or with the other hunters or by yourself or whatever. I like fights like this a lot. I think also what Capcom was successfully able to do with Omega Planetes is they were able to communicate all of the mandatory information, the stuff that you absolutely needed to know in order to deal with this comfortably, but at the same time, they also buried a ton of tech and information in just trial and error and figuring things out. I think that's the best way to approach a fight like this. This is another battle that ranges amongst the most complex that they have, but unlike things like Lunastra, they tell you the stuff that's really important right out the gate, and a lot of the other stuff that becomes extremely helpful is stuff that you're going to figure out on your own. I think that's an awesome thing about his design. Let me know down below if I missed anything, if I got anything incorrect, or if I got anything just kind of a little bit mixed up. It'll help myself, and it'll help your other hunters who are also looking for information down below. Let me know what you guys have been thinking about Omega Planetes. Let me know any strategies or tips or tricks that you guys have that I might not have mentioned. Anything at all about the fights. Any ways that you've been tackling him particularly. And if you want to watch myself fight him for the first time and try and start to figure things out for myself, I do have some of my initial Omega Planetes fights clipped on the channel that you can watch. There's also a second and a third channel, one of which being just VOD dedicated. If you want to watch the entirely unedited VODs I was going up against Omega Planetes, you can actually subscribe over to CR-Volcanic and go check out that, as well as every other stream VOD that we have. If you didn't know that those other two channels existed, you can find them in the homepage, or you can find them in the descriptions of pretty much everything that we post. But as for right now, this has been CR-Volcanic or Connor. I'll see you around.